G'day. Angela Bishop is my name, and it's my great pleasure to be moderating this Q&A for you tonight. What did you think?
Really good.
As you know, we are very lucky to have with us here tonight the working class boy himself, Mr. Jimmy Barnes, and director Mark Joffa. Please, a big round of applause.
I'm out of the wheelchair, which is good.
Yeah.
It's still a bit sore, but I'm okay.
For those who don't know, you fell through a hole in the stage.
Yeah, it's just a silly stage I was falling through.
But on the mend.
I'm on the mend.
And the coolest cane you've ever seen, ladies and gentlemen, with a skull on top. Look at that.
I actually bought that for Ellie Mae. I had to borrow it back.
So what's it like showing this to audiences? What's it like to see this reaction?
It's pretty strange. It's sort of like letting somebody read your mail, you know. Obviously, writing the book and then doing the tour, I sort of got to let this out. But it's something a bit more it's a bit more taking it home, and a bit more real, and a bit more confronting. Watching it, on the big screen. I've revisited this life a million times. But I remember going back to Elizabeth or going to Glasgow. And it really had an effect on me. So, I'm glad you all liked it. But I sat down, I watched Rushes with Mark, and we're going, yeah, this is all good. And then I sat in the theatre, the first screening we had, and I thought I'd be fine, and I went the whole way through it. So I didn't stay for this one. I thought I'd come in at the end.
Mark, what was it like to take Jimmy back to those places? We those of us who've been lucky enough to see the shows or read the books, we heard the tales or seen the tales, but to actually take him to Glasgow, to actually take him to Elizabeth, what emotions did you see, and how did you seek to capture it for the documentary?
Well, the important thing was to capture it, and we didn't know it, Jimmy Roberts, but he lives in the moment, and everything.
In other words, I can't follow a script.
Well, we didn't have a script. You can't have too much of a script, but we made a deliberate point to take him to the places if they weren't knocked down to where we grew up and then we went to school and all that, and something just floods over him, and it was just really captivating to watch. Whether it was Glasgow or it was Elizabeth, he tried to contain it. It was my job, our job, to make sure we captured every moment without him intruding or impinging on him. There's no false things, I hope, in the film at all. There's no artifice. We made that decision really early that we weren't going to have any recreations of kids running around with mullets playing them. And
you don't have a mullet.
I had one too. And so we really made a point, Angel, just making it as real as possible, and it was really important to capture that. And he just went into that moment as he does on stage, when he's singing with everything, and just made sure I didn't stuff anything up.
You've been on stage for such a long time, for so many years, but this is you really stripped bare.
Yeah, I've spent a couple of years, obviously, since the first book, and I've done that tour, and I did the Working Class Man tour, and it's a whole different world for me, being that sort of exposed. I'm used to sort of being on stage and hardly saying anything except fuck off. and basically I've been hidden and being cradled by the music, so you can sort of hide in the music. So this is pretty exposing, and it's, when you consider the subject matter, the first 20 odd times I did it, it was really, really brutal, and I'd be up there and I'd just be a nervous wreck. But like I said, I thought I'd get used to it, and then we went back to these, with the experience of doing the show and writing the book, to these places, like driving into Glasgow, getting into Glasgow on that train the first time, and then driving around there, it was a whole new thing. It was like going back to the scene of the crime, and it just sort of, it took on a whole different life, and really had knots on my stomach, and it was difficult to keep it together. And the same with Elizabeth. I remember walking up to that house in Elizabeth, and it was like, it was like the Amityville horror, It was just like standing out front, and the house actually looks a lot better than when we lived in it. So I was glad to see that the house had sort of had a new life, but I couldn't help but be drawn back to the old one.
Before you sat down to write the first book, to write Working Class Boy, how much of all that had happened to you had you faced, had you addressed in your life?
Well, not much of it really, because I joined Cultures when I was 16 and a half, and basically I ran from it from then on, and I tried not to look back, and unless I really had to. So a lot of that stuff I tried to block from my mind, from my memory, and I certainly hadn't spoken to anybody about it. I hadn't spoken to Jane, or my kids, or obviously my siblings about any of this. It was just sort of, let's push it away and hopefully it'll go away. But there was other stuff that when I was sitting down and I started writing, I thought, oh yeah, I remember I'll write about this story. And I'd start writing about something, basic. And then I'd start to remember all these other things that I not only tried to block, but I'd completely forgotten. Things that obviously you don't want to remember. And that was pretty confronting. And Jane gave me a lot of space to write this because I was sort of a moody bastard when I was doing it. I'd get really upset by it. And I'd be sitting in my study there in my room, writing with me and the dogs, and read a bit to the dogs, see if they wag their tails, and if they wag their tails, it was a good sign. But every single night writing, I'd sort of finish up, and I'd be sort of like stunned and a bit shocked, and I'd have to sort of, Jane would come in and sort of try and talk me down. So it was quite confronting doing all this.
Mark, you captured some beautiful moments, and one in particular with David, with your beautiful son David Campbell, and describing what it meant to him when he saw his dad on stage. Now, how many actual shows did you film to capture this in the doc? I mean, what was it about that moment that you felt needed to feature in this documentary?
Well, it was that wonderful moment with the crowd in the film gasps. And I heard people here too. I always get sort of tear. I get emotional when I see it. I've seen it 100 times. And that was a wonderful moment on the stage show. And we didn't know what David was going to say when we interviewed him. We interviewed him quite late. He's a fabulous guy. And he just started talking about that. And I didn't know that what he said was going to come out. He had talked about all those things. So I'm always captivated by that. And so we had to marry that with when he came out on stage, because we couldn't fake that. There was no point with, the spine of the movie, those wonderful musical performances. I don't think we could recapture that moment when he comes out to see Jimmy on stage and they sing together, because that would be false.
And that thing that David was saying about it was I orchestrated this moment. I hadn't. It was something that like David said, we both live on the stage for the last all our lives basically, and I hadn't really orchestrated it. And I've been thinking about it since I've seen the first cut, and I've been talking about the movie a little bit. That moment when he came out, because every night I'd say sort of similar things, but it sort of changed and expand on things a little bit. That night he came out, I didn't expect the reaction from him or from me that we got, and I didn't orchestrate it to bring us together. And I've said it today in interviews. In fact, it was at the State Theatre, and I don't know what it was, a couple of thousand people in there, and there's cameras everywhere. And it literally, when he came out, it was like there was nobody else in the room. It was just him and I, and it was really touching. And we really had to keep it together. And the funniest thing was, I would talk to David beforehand, and I said, it could be a bit emotional, I'm not sure. Do you want me to sing the first verse, give you a chance to get your breath? I'm a professional. I can handle this, Dad. I'm a professional. And of course, he felt marked, and so did I. So it was really sort of moving. But like I said, it was just him and I.
So many of the revelations that you have. I mean, making a revelation like that on stage in front of an audience. It's a funny thing about you blokes. You don't like talking one-on-one.
No.
And yet,
we prefer an audience.
And yet on stage, you were pouring this out. Now tell me about the reaction you had from men in the audience who was suddenly having a similar reaction and suddenly telling their own stories that they hadn't told before? And are you expecting a similar thing to happen now with the documentary?
Well, since the book, I've had this reaction with particularly with blokes, but I mean all sorts of people, but particularly with blokes where, like I've spoken about this a lot. Men don't like to speak about things. We don't like to talk about anything that's too close, anything that's too, that makes you too vulnerable, and really that's caused a lot of problems in society, and a lot of problems not only just in families, but a lot of problems with men. There's been men. Because men don't talk, because men don't share their problems, they really bottle things up, and it's come out in abuse and alcoholism and domestic violence and many suicide. So really, this was, I think, me talking about this stuff, because they were all going, Jimmy will be safe bet with Jimmy, he won't talk about any of this shit, And me talking about it, I think, was quite confronting for a lot of people. And then once they got over this, sort of that being confronting, I had people stop me in the street and stop me at book signings, and after shows, saying that they've been through the same stuff, if not the same stuff, then certain degrees of it, So there's a lot of things out there that people have to address, and I said it on the show. If nothing else, if it starts a conversation, between men, between families, then it's been worth doing, because it has been painful a lot of times to do it, and it stirred up like a hornet's nest. We hadn't. There was a reason why we hadn't spoken about this, because we didn't want to face it again. But I know now that facing it was like I said, it was the best thing I could do. But it was just difficult, and I had to choose when I could cope with it. It's the same for most of us.